been little over a year since the pandemic hit us and changed everything drastically. It has been quite the journey for us, and we owe our thanks to the industries, companies, and people that touch various facets of our lives who work tirelessly in these unprecedented times. Our lives were made comfortable thanks to people that kept producing and providing basic comforts like healthcare, internet bandwidth, entertainment, and of course, video games. We've often discussed in our podcast about how vital the role of video games has been during the whole ordeal. Yet, our conversation mostly revolved around things that was hot news, like the release of new consoles, awesome new games, and VR tech, all of which, by the way, you can check out in our YouTube channel. But we overlooked one key part of the industry, one with the most passionate of communities, and one where games arguably shine the brightest. I'm of course talking about the PC platform. So, today's podcast is dedicated to the awesomeness that is PC gaming. I mean, come on, it's long overdue. Hi, I'm Ishaq, and this is the iXie Gaming Podcast. Okay, first things first. I know the timing's a bit off, and PC gaming is not the easiest of hobbies at the moment, given the super high demand for GPUs due to various reasons, which we'll get to later on in the podcast. But hey, so are the new consoles, right? They too are on high demand and hard to get. So, on that note, let's begin. And begin we shall right at the very beginning. Any gaming enthusiast who does more than just play and is interested in the happenings of the industry will know that the very first video game was made on a computer. A supercomputer, in fact. However, the purpose of the game was not strictly entertainment, and it was conceived as more of a demonstration of what computers can do way back in the 1950s. So this really was not the beginning. Not quite. The quote-unquote dawn of video games actually emerged in the early 70s, with games like Pong becoming immensely successful in the arcade scene. This further down the line made way to home consoles like the Magnavox Odyssey and the Atari 2600. And in that era of arcades and home consoles being the hottest commodities, conventional computers were still looked upon as a productivity tool, and games were far from their priority. The video game scene was hitting new highs year on year as the industry was growing at a breakneck pace, thanks to packed arcades and sold-out consoles. Then there was the infamous video game crash that pretty much decimated the industry. Enter Nintendo to save the day and revive the industry. The Japanese company made a splash with innovation in its hardware and revolutionary software, with games that had stories and secrets, something that was unseen until then. Nintendo's momentum only got stronger over the years, and eventually new players like Sony were looking to enter the industry. I know, we're still discussing consoles, but this was the early 90s, and this is where the legacy of PC really began to shape itself. Up until now, video games were mostly 2D side-scrolling affairs with the occasional flight or space sim or a top-down RPG changing perspectives. But all of that changed with Doom back in 1993. Doom was unlike anything in its time. While first-person perspective games had been done before, Doom can single-handedly be attributed to the popularity of the first-person shooter genre even today, featuring groundbreaking 3D graphics, support for user mods, and more importantly, networked multiplayer gameplay. Doom just showed the world what a fantastic platform PC can be for video games. The popularity of the game made way for more such titles, and game studios slowly started to recognize the potential that PCs carried for gaming. It wasn't long before PC ports of console games started becoming more frequent, and the resurgence of genres like real-time strategy meant that these lineup of games emerged on the PC first, before consoles, and were best suited to play on the PC for a good while. Some of the industry's defining titles like Warcraft, Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, and StarCraft were released at this point. And on the first-person shooter front, landmark titles like Quake, Half-Life, System Shock, Unreal Tournament made their debut and wowed players. All of this happened while PC as a platform was being embraced more and more by both players and the development community. And it's at this point where the plot thickens. PC gaming had hit a point where companies started taking note, and the likes of Nvidia started producing graphics cards aimed squarely at gaming. And we all know now that gaming GPUs is an industry on its own. What this did back in the day, however, was open new doors to visual fidelity and game mechanics that was not possible before. Today, high-end GPUs hold the key to the next notable evolution in gaming, VR. VR has been around for a while, yes, but they have been held back to a large degree, as hardware advancements have not reached that place yet, where a VR game could look as good as, say, a Red Dead Redemption 2. But those days are definitely coming. For more on VR, about VR games, and the future of it all, do check out our podcasts and blog articles on VR on our YouTube channel and iXiegaming.com. But for now, let's get back to the year 2000. Keeping with the theme of the mid to late 90s, 2000 saw a landmark year for PC games, with the release of games like Diablo 2, The Sims, Command & Conquer Red Alert, and most notably, Counter-Strike. With Counter-Strike taking over the multiplayer scene, the following year saw the release of Warcraft 3 and the first ever Call of Duty the year after. By the year 2004, PC gaming was breaking new grounds in terms of graphics and gameplay. Doom 3, Half-Life 2, and the original Far Cry served as visual showcases for the platform while also being groundbreaking games in their own right, while the console counterparts were struggling to match the quality PCs brought to the table. This trajectory for rise in quality and popularity was only set to go higher and on autopilot for years to come. But it was not just great looking and playing games that made PC such a vital part of gaming history. Over time, game engines like Unreal and Unity had gained immense popularity, and keen gamers were more intimately aware of the process of game development thanks to the ever-growing internet infrastructure and games media starting to snowball into a sizable industry. Then there is esports. What was mostly a niche, console-based fighting games tournament event up until the 90s transformed slowly but surely into an industry that is now worth $1 billion. And yes, PC gaming had a lot to do with this. Thanks to titles like StarCraft, Quake, Counter-Strike, and Warcraft, and the advancements in internet in the late 90s, the esports industry leaned over ever so closely towards PC. And since then, PC has been the go-to platform for most events thanks to the sustained popularity and passionate communities of games like Dota 2 and of course CSGO, among various others. By the mid-2000s, PC as a platform was as strong a competitor as any console before it. Such is the rise of PC gaming. It all started in the late 90s and saw various development across multiple facets of the industry. The platform has proven time and again to provide the best in gaming, beating consoles in their own game. Today, PC gaming is a completely different beast than what it was 20 years ago, much like the games industry itself. Modern day PC gaming is generally looked at as an expensive hobby thanks to processors and GPUs that are way more powerful than they were a few years ago and are getting better with each iteration every year. That said, PC also gives the flexibility that consoles rarely do, where the user can choose a budget that they want their gaming rig built on. There is a PC that can be made at practically any budget, and there are a set of games that can run on the PC you choose to buy or build. Not only is it a great platform for gamers, but also for developers, as major innovations frequently come out of the PC circle from a development point of view. Be it advancements in basic aspects like lighting and textures, or more complicated applications like ray tracing and DLSS, or its application in VR. These innovations and advancements have shaped how games are being made over the years. Gaming is at its best today and is poised to be better tomorrow. And there is no doubt that PC has a big part to play in it. The industry may have had a second shot at life back in the 80s thanks to a Japanese console, but it was PC in the early 90s that gave a rebirth to various genres of games, making LAN parties and online matches a prominent activity amongst gamers and spearheading the industry with advanced hardware being iterated every year alongside competition that tries to one-up each other. And that brings us to today, where an unlikely entity has taken over the world economy by storm, and the demographic affected most by it are PC gamers. In a way, the resurgence in crypto mining combined with a spike in demand for everything electronic thanks to the pandemic has seen GPUs vanish from stores within seconds, and the ones available are sold at way more than retail price. An RTX 3070, which has an Indian retail price of around 45,000 rupees, sells for over $1 lakh in most outlets. This is certainly affecting gamers, and companies seem helpless in handling the situation. Of course, this won't last long and things would get back to normal, but I really wanted to put this out there as a person from India who's been struggling to get my hands on an RTX 3070, or a PS5 for that matter, at a reasonable price. I hope I don't find myself complaining about this a few months down the line. So, what is your take on PC gaming? What's your favorite old school PC game? And what kind of gaming rig do you use? Do sound off in the comments. Let's get this conversation going. And we shall discuss topics like these and more in future podcasts to come. Until then, I'm Ishaq, and this is the iXie Gaming Podcast. You take care, stay safe, and keep gaming.